Good morning, everyone. I hope this video finds you in the best of health and spirits. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about why we urgently need strategies to develop non-dominant languages lexically. Okay, the term non-dominant here may be a misnomer a little bit in some cases, but I'm using it as an anti-catchphrase. Okay, the term lexically less developed or less evolved languages may be more apt. This may be more apt terminology because some languages like English and to a small extent French and German are rich in technical vocabulary, but most of the languages may not be so much so. And it is for this very reason developing non-dominant or less evolved, linguistically evolved languages like Scali is of extreme importance for designing and developing education system. As a matter of fact, this is one of the rudders, this is one of the pivots, axis upon which the entire edifice of pedagogy may rest. Okay, the term lexical is the commonly used English term. It means pertaining to or relating to any aspect of language with a particular emphasis on its diction or its vocabulary. Okay, all languages are not therefore equal. The theory of linguistic inequality is the idea that all languages have unequal social value, and there may be subjective inequality. Okay, there may be biases and prejudices involved because people from some language groups may believe their language should be superior or other languages to be inferior or vice versa in some cases. There may be strictly linguistic inequality in terms of linguistic items, usage, idioms, etc. Okay, technical vocabulary and non-technical vocabulary. There may also be differences in communicative ability, communicative inequality. There is differences in knowledge or skills. Okay. We also need to emphasize in this video the importance of language policy and language planning processes. And in India, we have had language policy planning processes. Therefore, however, this was associated with the dubious and devious Rajbhasha policy, antiquated Rajbhasha policy, which is somewhat Stalinist or semi-Stalinist in concept, approach, in inclination. I have dealt with this in a previous paper several years ago, I think over about 16 years ago. Please read this, and I have been writing extensively on language dynamics and linguistics as well, off and on. The Rajbhasha policy is probably therefore utterly outdated in need of a radical overhaul. I have also written about the need to empower linguistic have-nots. Okay, this is because people are subject to different acculturation and enculturation patterns. Therefore, English is a widely dominating language nowadays. But language dynamics may also change. But if you ask a person from Andhra Pradesh or Gujarat to become as fluent as an English person, it will not happen because he is subject to different acculturation and enculturation processes. Okay, and identity formation and individuation are also different processes. They work differently in different places. Okay, and we also in this video will review the concepts of pedagogy, verbal intelligence, linguistic acculturation, linguistic ethnography, etc. We will also discuss other concepts such as Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, linguistic workarounds, and econolexia. Okay, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is a form of linguistic determinism which may be weak or strong. That it explains states that the richness of vocabulary of of the language may determine how people's thought processes operate. Linguistic workarounds, that means complex concepts may be broken up into simpler vocabulary. People may still be able to communicate with ease. For example, Gujarati speakers or Marathi speakers may be more fluent in their own language, comfortable in their own language, rather than English, even if they are more fluent in English. So there are a lot of things that need to be borne in mind. Econoloxia. Okay, people may use a smaller active vocabulary compared to passive vocabulary. We have also spoken about lingual cultures, language cultures that revolve on languages. Some cultures are lingual cultures, some cultures are not. This is somewhat subjective, but we can still lay bare the basic concepts here. Okay, we will also need to study the process of lexical development among children and young adults in different societies and different cultural contexts in different parts of the world, particularly in developing countries, because developing countries need to catch up with developed countries in this core and regard. Okay, and we also need to bear in mind concepts such as first language acquisition pattern, second language acquisition pattern. We have had concepts such as behaviorism, B.F. Skinner. We have Noam Chomsky's theories, etc. And these will also need to be borne in mind. And we will also discuss the various strategies for boosting lexical development of languages. especially less dominant disempowered or disenfranchised languages. Okay, we will do this by studying different case studies and experiences drawn from real-time studies carried out and conducted in different parts of the world, particularly experiences from developing countries, and then draw inferences and generalizations therefrom. Okay, we hope that this will boost linguistic performance, economic performance in people of different cultures and different parts of the world, particularly those who lag behind economically or intellectually, or those who are underrepresented in science and economic development. This is because Western-centric researchers typically chase their own closeted intellectual pursuits. They do not apply social science research method or social science research techniques to the common and general utility of societies, leave alone the need and considerations of developing countries. Okay, a process of attempted and externally reinforced equalization needs to be put in place. We have termed this approach esopedology. Okay, therefore, lexical development of languages must form a part of language policy and language planning. Okay, language policy have discussed different people's take on this issue, like Robert B. Kaplan, Bernard Spolsky, Joseph Lubianco, etc. And please refer my earlier works on this issue. In India, for example, we had artificially and half-heartedly coined words in languages such as Hindi as a part of the antiquated Rajbhasha policies. Like, for example, terms for cricket in tennis and football were coined, and in French also there were large attempts. There were attempts to coin words artificially. For example, we had l'ordinateur for computer, la souris for mouse, and even to stray encroachment of English words into French is increasing gradually. But this is not a cause for alarm. French languages must grow naturally. Okay, and now we also come to different types. We also so therefore need the practical realism, and we need to keep on learning from our past experiences and experiences from different cultures in the world. Come up with concept inductive approaches will work well here. We also have had discussed different types of languages. For example, first group is languages whose grammar and diction was formally codified in at some point. Okay, and second group is languages whose grammar and diction was never codified at any point. Okay, they evolved more or less naturally, and we had also categorized languages into languages that primarily evolved and spread through the spoken medium. Such languages are called logophones. That is the term we proposed. Languages that primarily evolved and spread to the written medium. We call these graphophones. This is the term that we uh, point. We also spoke about fully empowered languages like English, partly empowered languages like Hindi and Bengali, non-empowered languages like less simple, less evolved languages which have a very small vocabulary. Okay, and pedagogy studies the entire process and methodology of education. So we need to have ethnography also put in place at all points, and it needs to be interfaced with linguistics. It also needs to be interfaced with pedagogy. Pedagogy is the formal study of how people learn in different cultures and societies. Pedagogy also, unfortunately, is very much abstract and Eurocentric in its orientation. There needs to be a change here, and we had written about this extensively in depth. We had published a paper on this in 2018. I had written also a book on this in 2024. Okay, and verbal intelligence also is a very important concept. We need to bear in mind concept of verbal intelligence at all times. Okay, because people with who know more developed languages with a richer vocabulary tend to be verbally more intelligent. This may be subjective a little bit, but this is how they are perceived to be. Okay, and in all endeavors we need to bridge the linguistic divide. We had called the first group linguistic haves and second group as linguistic have nots. Okay, the gap between the two needs to be bridged. Okay, I had also spoken about theory of linguistic expectation, non-linguistic expectation, linguistic sweet spot, economic sweet spot, etc. Please refer to my earlier work on this, and language dynamics also, of course. For all this, linguistic ethnography may be used. Linguistic ethnography refers to a growing body of research carried out by a large number of people, such as Frederick Erickson, John Gupetz, and Del Himes. Okay, and it was further extended by Jan Blomet, Marlene Martin Jones, Ben Rampton, Angela Kreese, and Celia Roberts. It has, however, not yet come to age fully, matured and evolved fully, and lot of work needs to be done. Okay, language acquisition also needs to be studied, both of first language and second language acquisition, including phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics and vocabulary acquisition also. Okay, I had also spoken about large number of case studies. For example, we had the revival of Hebrew, simplified Chinese, which replaced more traditional forms of Chinese with lesser numbers of pinyin. It's a Romanized version of a Chinese writing system. Standardized dialects like Kadiboli in Hindi and Pongtonghua in Chinese. Esperanto, which is a universal language, supposedly universal language created by Alan Zamentov in 1887. However, this failed. We also had the adoption of Roman script in Bahasa in Indonesia, which replaced Javi script and it is known as Akshara Latin. Okay, we also had this being adopted in Brunei, but Brunei now apparently is moving away from this slowly. English loanwords are taken formally into Japanese. Same is the case with South Korea. We also had Pidgins. Okay, the languages losing their vocabulary, syntax, and getting simplified over a passage of time. This is happening in many places in Africa. Pidginization, and these become more formal over a period of time, and this is known as creolization. We also have hybrid languages, lingua franca, etc. And lingua francas are generally required in a highly linguistic environment such as Congo and Senegal. Most African countries fall into this concept. Read all my discussions on this in my previous papers. This will be necessary before we develop any strategies. So, no copy paste scholarship is required. Always take the considerations into a small of each country or each location into account. Okay. In Africa, for example, we have many maternal languages. Therefore, we do need a lingua franca. Many of them are unteachable and may not be able to evolve into languages of higher education. So, languages like English and French are a must. French is gradually declining, but whether English should take its place or not, we don't know. Maybe the Frenches will evolve into pidgins. For example, we have an Ivory Coast. We have some languages like Nuichi being evolved. Okay, and similarly, even in Senegal, Wolof is taking French words, French is taking Wolof words, etc. Okay. Approaches that need to be studied in aspects that need to be studied in lexical development are as follows. You also need to study the official position regarding languages. Country may or may not have official languages, may not have national languages, may have more than one national language. And we also need to study the linguistic landscape thoroughly. This needs to be done through ethnography, linguistic ethnography, which will form the basis of ethnography as is used in pedagogical studies. However, this is not yet evolved and matured. I would expect that people from developing countries take the lead here. People's attitudes regarding language needs to be studied. Role-based assessment of languages need to be studied because in India, especially, we use different language for different purposes. Nobody says they praise English. English is used for as a medium and vehicle for higher education. Role-based assessment, context-based assessment of language needs to be studied. Assessment based on age group, gender, education level, socio-economic group, socio-cultural group, etc. All these things need to be studied, and other aspects such as individuation, identity formation, and the symbiotic approach to social culture change also must be borne in mind as necessary. And along with this, we need to also have the proper education for infrastructure, educational infrastructure in place. We need to have availability of trained and qualified teachers. There is no substitute for good teachers because teachers are gurus or preceptors. Okay, they guide their students morally, intellectually, and academically also. Okay, and during the process of uh, lexical development of languages, large number of factors must be borne in mind and taken into account in consideration. For example, ease of learning must be understood. Okay, they must not be befuddled with unnecessarily complex vocabulary. We must try to maximize economic output always. Okay, not not just ease of learning. We must make the country economically prosperous. We must also maximize cultural and linguistic output. Okay, we must also maximize and empower social empowerment in social mobility of lower social people belonging to lower economic strata must they must be able to move upwards. Okay, it must be user friendly always. Okay, we must also try to maximize first language proficiency and competence. We must also try to maximize second language proficiency and competence. Alignment must be made to the requirements of the job market. Alignment to national or regional requirements. We must understand and mesh this and interface this with language dynamics. I have written extensively about language dynamics, 3 or 4 papers. Please read them. There must be an alignment with global trends also. We must not have a frog in the well approach and attitude. There must be student friendliness and child friendliness. We must meet the needs and expectations of the underprivileged, reducing gaps between students belonging to different social, cultural, and social economic backgrounds. And students' ability to learn two languages together must be taken into account and consideration. Okay, and critical, unique, and revelatory cases also must case studies also must be used. Ethnography fieldwork must form the basis for case studies. Case studies also must be taken account into consideration. Must also keep learning continuously. This is known as an inductive approach in science. This is unfortunately not but used or followed at all times assiduously and rigorously. This is because of time and cost constraints and considerations, I suppose. But we must somehow make a clean break from the past. Okay, and apart from this, we will need to make sure that whether teaching large number of well, English words, whether they boost technical skills or account. Okay, all these things also need to be taken into account, and we must also see how understand how students are able to acquire language. We must take into account critical, unique and revelatory cases, and creating artificial complex words may not be necessary. Instead of that, we may use dominant English words also. Okay, and we must also tie linguistic proficiency, see how it is tied to economic outcomes. A lot of research needs to be done in a lot of areas in linguistics and pedagogy. I have discussed all these in my paper at very great level of depth. Please read my paper. This is, video cannot be a substitute for my earlier research work. Okay. There must also be a representation of various groups during the process of lexical development of language, representation from all linguistic groups in a country, region, wherever necessary, representation of subject matters from various other fields such as botany, zoology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, whenever sociology, anthropology, economics, political science, whenever new words are being called, representation must be had of linguists also. There must be also representation of sociologists and anthropologists, representative from educational departments, government representatives, etc. Eventual formulation of standards, guidelines, and policies also must be done. This is very important. Therefore, we need to have a multifaceted interdisciplinary approach in place. And widely used foreign languages in the dominant language really must be retained as they are, because finding new words here will be superfluous and redundant. Words for which there are no local equivalents may be borrowed from non-dominant languages with a vengeance. Okay, so that people learn the internationally prevalent or dominant current words as well. Words that are widely used throughout the world must be imported as they are. Okay, and the principle of redundancy must be borne in mind. There must not be too many superfluous words in the non-dominant languages, and words must be appropriately used at the proper level. And whenever a new word is introduced, we must make sure that the entire chain of words, vocabulary is being introduced at the appropriate level in the correct order. Okay, so all technical vocabulary must be taught. So students who pass a course in say economics must be aware of all the widely used technical terminology. Okay, therefore we must also progress gradually. Principle of gradual progression must be in mind. Principle of completeness. All vocabulary must be taught. Emotional maturity of students must be understood. Cultural preferences must be understood and garnered. Okay, through ethnographic approaches. Preference of students from different socio-cultural and socio-economic backgrounds must be accounted for. Okay, and bilingual textbooks is a rather exciting possibility. I've been discussing this in great detail. Well, this approach pertains to all parts of speech: nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, etc. And we may use the necessary subjectives, suffixes. For example, if you're converting nouns into verbs, for example, we use the word karna in Hindi, like that. Okay, and minimum lexical or spelling changes may be used. Minimum pronunciation changes may be adopted, because deviating too much from the original word is messy and complicated. Okay, and adaptation may be required to some extent to make it fit into the culture and social milieu. Okay, uniform policy must be followed in a country and preferably worldwide also. These are some of the concepts I have touched upon. Please read my earlier paper on this subject. I have written two papers: how to empower linguistic have-nots, and second paper is how to uh, what is how to develop languages lexically. In addition, read my various works on linguistics and pedagogy also. I hope this video was very useful. Again, this cannot be a substitute for my earlier work. It's just meant to be introductory. Thank you very much again. Good.